Northern Leaders podcast, a podcast that shines a light on some of the wonderful leaders we have here in the North. And today's guest certainly fits the bill. Garry Partington is the CEO of Apadmi. Now, Apadmi is doing 30 million turnover this year, going to do 40 million turnover next year, 420 employees. Phenomenal business. But the story behind Garry is even more interesting. He is the son of a butcher from Rochdale who taught himself how to code, went to university, came back, got made redundant, and with three mates launched Apadmi, which is the business that we've got today. What's really fascinating, it's a lifestyle business, really, doing 2.5 million turnover when Howard Sims, one of the co-founders, nearly died. And that really changed the focus of the business. It became their Big Hairy Audacious Goal, and they set themselves a target of getting to 5,000 staff in 5 countries in 5 years. I can't wait to talk to Garry Partington. But before then, a quick word from our sponsor. This episode of Northern Leaders is sponsored by Wildbrook Commercial Real Estate. Wildbrook is an independent commercial property investment advisory business acting for investors on the purchase and sale of commercial properties. It's a big Northern Leaders podcast. Welcome to Garry Partington, CEO of Apadmi. Welcome, Garry.
Thank you, Chris.
Now, this podcast asks the same couple of questions at the start of every podcast. I'm going to start the same questions for you, Garry, as well. What does the North mean to you?
So I just love the North. You know, I'm Rochdale lad, born and bred, lived in the North most of my life. And it's just a great place for a lot of people to build businesses, work hard and try and make something for themselves. There's a lot of people that love working together and it's a great place to be.
You've lived away from the North briefly, went down to London. Where in the North if you've got a spare day, where do you go? What is your favourite spot in the North?
Well, for it depends on what we're doing. So for me and my missus, we like the outdoors. So we do a lot of archery. So we'll go up to Rochdale where we still go quite a bit to shoot. Or if we want to go on the bikes, we'll do something around the Transpennine Trail. If it's shopping, then it's centre of Manchester.
Okay. Have you not got one of those electric bikes? Have you? You're a proper cyclist.
Proper cyclist and a motorbike.
How far would you? This sounds like midlife crisis. This is the podcast for you, Garry. How far would you cycle?
We'd go anywhere. We might cycle from here all the way to Liverpool and back. So, but not at the moment with my dodgy knee.
No, well, we're going to get onto your knee later on, and you being a fraud.
Getting it in there first.
You being a fraud. This is the Northern Leaders podcast. We've spoken about the North. How do you define leadership?
So for me, leadership is all about trying to get people aligned on the same vision and strategy of what you're trying to achieve. It's all really key to make people understand where you want to go and let them figure out how they're going to get there, really. It's trying to keep everybody motivated behind that goal. And that's what I see as my job.
And what type of leader are you? Are you the sort of leader who rolls up his sleeves, leads by example, or do you take a step back and delegate and let people make their mistakes?
It's a combination. So, you know, sometimes you have to roll up your sleeves and get involved with the team. But other times, you know, you have to let people learn because the only way they do learn is by making those mistakes. You know, I've said before, we've had some of the most expensive training courses for some of the staff where it's cost us a lot, but they've learned so much out of it that they've improved themselves massively and helped us grow as a business.
Later in the episode, we're going to talk about your dress sense.
And
absolutely.
And how you taught me around that and how I look up to you.
Absolutely, yeah. Because I described you as Manchester's worst dressed man. But
multiple times, Chris, multiple times.
But seeing you today, I want to extend that across the North. I think you're the North's worst dressed man.
Yeah, I can live with that.
Okay, so your background's really interesting, your childhood, because obviously you didn't grow up in a tech family. You're the son of a Rochdale butcher. Yeah. Just paint a picture of your childhood for me.
So my dad worked really hard all of his life. You know, he was the kind of person that was up 4 a.m. He ran a butcher's shop, but he had a little bit of the entrepreneurial side because he did a lot of catering. So more than 50% of his business was delivering to pubs, to nursing homes and restaurants and so on. And and that inspired me to want to work hard. And I worked for my dad from when I was a young age. And just seeing, him doing 6-7 days a week, long 12-hour days, just instilled a work ethic in how I look at life.
I think that work ethic is so important and where it comes from. I listened to Gary Neville talking about his own dad, who was called Neville. And he was saying that his dad would get up, I think he was a lorry driver, he'd get up at like 4:30. And his mantra was attack the day, which is Gary Neville's mantra as well.
Yeah.
And that work ethic, quite often does come from your family. You've always been quite entrepreneurial. You mentioned that your dad was as well. You used to make pizzas as a kid in your dad's butcher shops and sell them to other butchers. So when I go to Asda and I see a prepared pizza, you were doing that years before.
That's what I was doing when I was about 12 years old,
You've got a favourite pizza?
I do. It's pepperoni passion. And going into Domino's now.
Wow. So, okay, those early days, were you this kid at school who used to bring tuck in and sell it at twice the price? Have you always had an eye for making money, the deal?
Yeah, one of the ones that I did that was a bit dodgy. In my early days, I went on the school trip to France, and over in France, they sell all these really cheap bangers that you can set off.
Yeah.
And I bought all those for like next to nothing, came them back and sold them around school until I got caught. Made quite a lot of money on that, but I was in a bit of trouble.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you lose your job at Apadmi because of your history of explosives, I think I'm slightly older than you, but I was of that era where we went to France on school trips and we came back with bangers. Yeah. And it's famous to remember, it wasn't me, it was a friend. But he stacked loads of them together and set them off and they made a real bang. Okay, so we've established your entrepreneurial genes quite early on. Yeah. And we've spoken about your work ethic as well. I want to get onto your love of computers because you are a geek. Yep. A nerd.
Self-confessed.
Okay. Self-confessed. Okay. At the age of 10, and we've got in the public gallery today, we've got a couple of young fans wanted to listen to this podcast as well. They won't understand this, but at the age of 10, you taught yourself to code on an ancient computer called a Commodore VIC-20. Now, these kids have got no idea what a Commodore VIC-20 was, but it was probably the size of this table, roughly pretty much an 8-bit entry-level computer as well. You're 10 years of age, and some kids fall in love with singers. You fell in love with the Commodore VIC-20. Just explain what that was.
So I wanted a Commodore 64, and I ended up getting a VIC-20. So I'm still upset at my parents for that, but we won't hold that against them. And it was a computer. You look back at the days, you had to load your games on a tape drive. So it was in those eras where if you had a high-speed dubbing tape-to-tape system in your house, you were like God because you could copy games, which I did. And so, you would load your games, you'd put the tape in, take some time to let it load and go and play your games. And what I really saw early on is I wanted to learn how to code on it. So I started reading up on magazines because in those times, wasn't really the internet. So you had to find books, find magazines, and learn how to code.
People lose sight of the fact that there was a life before the internet as well. But people also don't realise you had like modem dial-ups and things like that. Yeah. And I mean, I grew up playing Pac-Man. That was pretty much it as well. That love of computers, you didn't come from your parents, did it? You saw that Commodore VIC-20 and it was like love at first sight.
Yeah, well, I think that it first started off with the BBC Micro program when I was in primary school, and that was launched while I was there. So that program that they did was an amazing way for people to see computers. And so that for me caused an interest that then when I was a little bit older, I thought, I want one. And I started learning to code, and it was all around, my friends had either ZX Spectrums or Amstrads and Commodores, and you were just looking at all of these different computers and thinking, that's really interesting.
So for the younger listeners out there as well, please Google all these computers because, everything's got smaller. But back then, it was like a mobile phone. It was like the size of a brick. Okay, so we've spoken a little bit about your love of computers, spoken about your work ethic, and you combine the two because you wanted the Amiga computer, which was a step up. And you had 3 jobs. You worked at the Edgerton Arms. Yeah. You worked at Tesco. What was your job at Tesco?
I was a checkout assistant, so I worked on the checkouts.
Did you?
So,
right. Did you give all your mates discounts?
No comment, Chris.
Right, and then you worked at your dad's butcher shop as well. So you're working long hours. But because you wanted this Amiga. So what was different about the Amiga to the Commodore?
Next generation, came with hard drive, was just completely different. It had floppy disk on it rather than an old tape drive. And I was
what year would this be?
Oh, this would have been I must have been 14, so 88, something like that. I've just told how old I am. God damn it. And around that time, and I just really wanted to get one of those.
And would you take yourself into the bedroom, pull the curtains and just, look at a book and spend hours and hours and hours trying to teach yourself how to code?
Yeah, I learned 6800 assembler, which is the lowest level you can go on the computer. So I started learning how to do it from that level, then went up from that, learning higher level languages.
What I find fascinating is that you're from Rochdale as well. Richard Tang at Zen Internet, I think he followed a similar route to you, found a very early love of computers, and did something fairly similar as well. I heard a really great story about you. You tell me if it's true or not, but you're at school, you're 14 years of age, you've got a computer science lesson. You're in this computer science lesson, in the space of one lesson, you build a game. Yeah. Okay. And then you'd think the teacher would be quite impressed by that. Yeah. But you got into trouble.
Yeah, he called me a liar. He said I'd never built that game in that hour. I was cheating, and I got detention.
Teachers today are very different from the teachers of our era, aren't they? Because we had a music teacher, and he threw chairs and threw books. When the teacher comes in and they finally marked your work. In his case, it was like months, and he'd throw a book at you like it was a missile
or a board rubber.
Absolutely, if it took your eye out, that was just collateral damage. Kids don't know how easy it is these days.
I got grappled to the floor once just because I was play fighting with a mate, and the teacher came in, wasn't happy, and just took us both out with a rugby tackle.
Yeah, you probably deserved it. Actually, you probably were you a smart school dresser, or have you always?
I was the same as what you dressed today. So
quite smart then. Quite smart. You come back with a little bit there. Okay. Yeah. So you thought briefly about becoming a lawyer. Yeah. And one trip to court, not as a defendant, but tell us about that experience.
It just bored me. I was in courtroom and I was just like, this isn't what I want to do day to day for the rest of my life. And I think I'm glad in a way I turned away from that. I just sat in the court watching what was happening. I was like, I couldn't see myself sat here all the time.
See, people talk about work experience, and I always encourage people to do work experience. And whenever I've recruited anybody, not at the same scale that you've done, I've always said, look, come in here first. I said, because we'll pay you. I said, but it might not be right for you, and we might not be right for you, and might not be right for us. I said, but better to make that decision, that mistake. And like you had visualizations of being a lawyer. One day in a courtroom, bored rigid, realised it wasn't for you. So you went to Lancaster University. Yep. You obviously like to travel a long way from Rochdale.
It was far enough that I could get meat deliveries off my dad. So so he still gave me a meat parcel every week.
What was in that meat parcel?
Oh, so there's one funny story actually. My dad's still upset about this. Yeah. He sent me up as a treat. He sent me some fillet steak.
Did he?
And me and my mate sliced it up and made a beef curry out of it.
Right.
I know, he's not happy.
He's still bitter about it now. He is. So you got sent meat parcels up to Lancaster. Dirty washing, did you send that back the other way? Did that go the other way?
If my mum ever came near, then the washing went.
So what did you study at university?
Computer science.
Okay. And did you know then that you'd found your calling in life?
Yeah, I just loved it. So, just being able to build things. Because what a lot of people don't realise is it's quite a nice feeling that you're going out there and you're building something new that somebody's not done before. It is a creative industry, as well as the technical challenges that come with it. So you've got the mixture of creativity, engineering to build something that can do what you want it to do and last. And that for me is quite an enjoying thing to create.
See, but the thing is, like the internet, I remember it's 30 years this year since me and my wife went traveling around the world. She's my girlfriend at the time. We still talk about this conversation we had about this thing called the internet. And, we said, do you think it'll take off? And I said, I'm not sure. And like newsrooms had that internet thingy in the corner, which only one person could use. Back then, when you were at university at Lancaster, there was no social media, so we talk about the fact that you knew you wanted to be in computers. That wasn't for everybody. I mean, were you still unusual in that?
There wasn't that many of us. The faculty was growing. I think our year there was like 30 people doing computer science, which isn't a great number. And what was interesting for me was at that point when I was at uni, I went to one of the careers fairs, and there's this guy from BT who was just going, "Have you seen this thing?" And it was the launch of I think it was the Mosaic browser. I think it was, and and he was just like so excited that the internet had become visual. Because before that, for those that don't know, I think it was links that we used to use, which was text-based searching, following links. And the creation of the browser just made it available to everyone without technical knowledge. And that was great.
I'm often intrigued about how your parents would describe what you do. I mean,
They
your
still
parents,
don't know.
yeah, I was gonna say, your parents from Rochdale, you work at Apadmi, it's a consultancy. You make apps, among other things as well. How do your parents describe what our Garry does?
Well, nowadays it's dead easy because they can reference the brands that we do it for.
Yeah.
They can say, have you ever ordered Domino's pizza off your phone?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they do that. And it's just nice and easy for them to explain things like that. But previously they found it really difficult to go because, in the previous times where, he helps make smartphones.
I know.
And people go, what's a smartphone?
One thing it just occurs to me is why have you got two R's in your name?
Because my dad's Barry with two R's. My dad's brother was Harry with two R's. And it all just followed through with that. Gary,
Right.
Barry and Harry. So
Right.
You were expecting that answer,
No,
were you?
I wasn't. This is what makes Northern Leaders podcast so listenable because we cut through the really important stuff. That's a great story. There's a footballer called Gary Flitcroft as well, and he's two G's. It's quite unusual. It does help though.
Two G's.
Search. Two R's. Just checking if you're awake and you passed your test. It might be two G's, for all I know, but it's definitely two R's. It helps with SEO and finding people, doesn't it? Having a second R in your name.
Definitely.
So you left Lancaster University, and I think your first gig was a software engineer at British Aerospace, wasn't it, in London?
Yeah.
What did you do there?
Went down there working on command and control systems for Type 22 Navy frigates.
As a 21-year-old?
Yeah.
Well, that's a pretty serious job, isn't it?
Yeah, so I joined the team as a graduate, got loads of training there, building real systems, went to go on the frigates and went and trained out people to use the system. So we were playing, for those that do remember, back in the day, we had silicon graphics machines creating a 3D world. And then literally you had a mock-up of the interior of a command and control room of a frigate. And then you went and tried to create all the 3D world around it, which was very, very cool at the time.
I'm going to paint a picture for the benefit of our listeners now of what you're wearing. Okay, as mentioned before, that you are a fashion god in certain circles as well. So you've got your cheesecloth shirt on,
nice.
Your black t-shirt, your shorts.
I put the shit on just for you.
Absolutely, I know you did. And your expensive trainers as well. Okay, but you're very much a lad of Rochdale. Okay,
Yeah.
You went down to that there, London.
Yeah.
What did you think of London the first time you went down there?
Expensive.
Did you?
Yeah. So I finished uni.
Did you say how much?
Well, pretty much. So, funny story. My mum and dad came down and we went to Leicester Square for breakfast. This was like 3 months after we'd moved there. My mum and dad came down. We went to Leicester Square. We went to one of the cafes in the Leicester Square. And my dad went in. He got us a croissant with egg and bacon on each and a cup of coffee each. Yeah. And he turned around at the end of it when she told him how much, and he went, "Do you offer bloody mortgages here as well to pay for it?" And it was like, at the time it was like 20 quid. This is going back 20 odd years.
Yeah. You wouldn't get a croissant and a cup of coffee now for that sort of money. But did you settle into London? I mean,
I did, yeah, and I quite enjoyed it. I was living out in Kingston, a beautiful place down by the river, and met a lot of people that were really into the tech scene. But my partner at the time, she just wanted to come back home and back to Rochdale to be near family. Yeah. So that's what we did.
No, and obviously we're talking about the North and Northern Leaders. Okay, so you come back up north. I think life and careers are all shaped by sliding doors moments. Yeah. And if you open that door, it takes you in a certain direction and vice versa as well. And I think, and you returned to the North, you got a job at a tech company called Teleca.
Yeah.
Now, a couple of your colleagues that people in the tech fraternity would know, Paul Sherwood became the CEO of CodeThink, and Nick Stammer, who went on to start Mobica, which was a big company in the Northwest as well. You, as a 20-something, at the start of your career, you couldn't help but learn off these sorts of people, could you?
Yeah, and it was interesting because it was funny at the time because I never really met those guys, but they had a really successful business, a consultancy, putting people into client projects, and I was just very fortunate that I went onto a client project which was at the time was Ericsson, and by pure luck they were creating the first ever smartphone, and just jumped into that position there, and very quickly went from one person in the team. I think at one point there were like 3 or 4 of us went out there. Within a few months, that had grown to like 30, 40 people. And then from other places as well, within a year, I think there was like 200 of us working on this phone.
It would be wrong to say that you were the man who created the smartphone, wouldn't it?
It would definitely be wrong.
It would be wrong to say
Definitely
that.
wrong.
But people lose sight of the fact that the smartphone was actually developed here in the north.
Yeah, one of the first smartphones ever was developed out in Warrington. Ericsson had a site there, and it was a really interesting flip phone. It worked on what was Scion that became Symbian, which was the co-joined operating system for the first round of smartphones. And these phones were great. The first iteration, and it was a great way to learn about how to make things really efficient, small form factors, new programming paradigms, which still a lot of those ideas still continue today, which is why mobile development is so specific compared to other areas.
But if you look at the business you set up, Apadmi, that learning that you had at that time in your career was pretty pivotal. There's a guy called Graham Donoghue. He's also a Northern leader. He runs Forge Holiday Group, based out in Chester. And he showed me around his amazing office. It's what a lovely guy, beekeeper, incidentally. 1,200 people. And he's got this wall, not dissimilar to one of the walls in this studio today. And it's just got about 70 mobile phones through the years. And it starts off with that huge breeze block type phone. And it shows lots of Ericssons, lots of Motorola's, and I said, why do you put that on there for? He said, because I want to remind people, that you have to constantly reiterate.
Yeah.
You constantly have to iterate to come up with new phones. Otherwise you're left behind. But the other one is actually that there's no room for complacency and that technology changes as well.
Yeah, exactly.
You look at a smartphone today compared to the one, if you were painting a picture of what that smartphone looked like when you were developing it, how big would it have been?
So for smartphone, I was going to compare it. So there's another phone, the Ericsson SH888, which was the Volvo of mobile phones at the time. So it about as long as a current iPhone is today, not as wide, but a lot deeper. So they really chunked out your pocket. Thinking about it, it's 3/4 of the size of a banana in length, but wider.
Yeah, I know. I know. That's what I say. People don't realize. And the thing with phones back then, people actually used them to phone.
Yeah.
It's the most ridiculous name now, calling a phone because people don't use it to make any phone calls. Now, you met one of your future Apadmi co-founders, Nick Black.
Yeah.
Who I would say, and Nick won't mind me saying this, is to dancing what you are to fashion.
He's not a bad dancer.
That's fair enough.
He loves his dancing.
He does. I think you became the CTO of a business called, do you use the initials, EMCC?
EMCC,
okay, yeah. Software in 2000.
Experts in Mobile Connected Computing.
That was the name of the business, was it?
Well, that's what I made up
That's
for
what
it.
you made up, okay. That was in 2000. And then you did this, and then you got made redundant in 2009, by which point Howard Sims, who also became a co-founder of Apadmi, was working with you as well.
Yeah.
And I think sometime after that,
Adam Fleming was at MCC as well for a good number of years.
Right,
okay. It's where we all met.
Okay, so then 2009, like cycles, technology changes. Okay, what you thought was pretty safe a career.
Yeah.
You then get the note you will be made redundant.
Yeah.
Okay. Like you had families, marriages, etc.
Yeah.
What was that like? In 2009, you get made redundant.
Yeah. Are we allowed to swear on it?
No. Okay.
It wasn't great.
Yeah,
it wasn't great. It wasn't a great day.
Did it come out of the blue?
It was about 4 weeks in the making, really.
Yeah.
And you could see it. So that's when I started talking to Nick and Adam and Howard. And my co-founder at the time, my business partner, shall I say, I wasn't a co-founder of EMCC. I was just brought in later on. He didn't want to do anything. He was saying he was a lot older, and he just said, I just want to retire now. Yeah. So and I was like, I'm not done. I was only quite young.
In 2009, you'd have been what?
Don't talk about my age, Chris. Yeah, so 30.
Yeah,
30. So I was like very keen to do something else. So 35, so something like that. And and it was like I want to go on and create a business. I loved the sector. I loved some of the customers and what we were doing for them. I was like, got more to give. So I had the idea to create Apadmi, and I pitched these three guys on the idea of setting up a business to help people create and create apps and to better engage with their customers.
You didn't have much in the way of redundancy payment.
No, nothing.
No, and I think in those early years as well, I think you financed it on your credit cards.
Yeah.
Didn't take a salary for 9 months.
Yeah.
But the four of you came together out of adversity. And I always think that when people are defining the qualities that make a leader and make an entrepreneur, it's actually you see a positive in every negative, and you've been made redundant. You didn't feel sorry for yourself for very long.
No.
And then you very quickly thought, this is the opportunity for us to, in the age you're at as well, to become entrepreneurs. Is that the way you turned it?
Yeah, pretty much. And and you get these things in life that you can look at them as life-changing events, and you either use them to make you stronger, or you wither and fade away. And I've always looked at it that I just use it as a learning exercise.
And on the flip side, those people who often struggle are the ones who take to social media and LinkedIn to complain about their lot before they've actually done anything. We're going to go for a quick break. When we come back, we're going to be talking about the Fab Four.
Cool. Cheers, Chris.
Well, welcome back to this episode of the Northern Leaders podcast with Garry Partington, with 2R, CEO of Apadmi. I didn't know that, and I like to know most things. Now, I mentioned just before the break that we're going to talk about the Fab Four. That's because the four co-founders were known as the Beatles. And I'm guessing, looking at you, you were Paul McCartney.
Yeah, no comment.
Did you?
I think Howard's Paul McCartney. That's his love.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I'm just trying to think who you would have been. I mean, are you the creative, the John Lennon?
Definitely. I'm not a singer. I don't play any musical instrument. So I'd probably put myself more like not in the Beatles, but that's a different story.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to put you down as Ringo Starr. That's what I'm going to do. I sometimes think, and I've been around a long time, and I've seen businesses come and businesses go as well. And I sometimes think there's this expectation that people want it immediately. And people talk about overnight success stories. And that's for X Factor. We're talking to Matthew Scullion recently, and he sort of talked about this 14-year overnight success story.
Yeah.
You had to work really hard at the beginning of that business. And, you all had commitments, all had financial commitments as well, and you weren't taking any money out for 9 months as well.
Yeah.
Was there ever a point where you thought, I'm going to jack this in and get a proper job? Or did your parents say to you, why don't you just get a proper job?
Never. No, never actually thought about it. I just always believed in that we were gonna do something, and never thought we were gonna be as big as what we are now, and with the plans we have, but always thought we were gonna be all right, and we were happy with that. We were happy with the concept of being all right until things changed. And then
timing is such a big thing in business as well, and the advent of the apps really played to Apadmi's strength, didn't it? So you started winning big contracts. I know you won. You started working with the BBC. You worked with Argos,
NHS, big brands.
I mean, BBC Sounds, that was a massive contract, wasn't it? For
BBC iPlayer.
BBC iPlayer. Just explain that contract.
Yeah, so I mean, we'd been working with the BBC on a few things, and then we were talking to them, and they asked us to help them with the BBC iPlayer radio app, and we built that first version for them, which was loved for years and years and years.
With how many staff?
I can't remember that now. Maybe it was only 3 or 4 guys that built it. It wasn't many, but it was a great app that really was engaging. It's actually what was in that app was one of the things. One of our very early guys, Matthew Graham, who's still with us today, G-Man as we like to call him.
Can I just say, when Matthew Graham listens to this and he hears him referenced as G-Man and he punches the air or punches you, I want no part of it.
Yeah, okay. But yeah, he loves it, and he's a great member of the team that's been with us for years, day one. And
that, incidentally, I think is really telling when you walk in a business and you say to people, how long have you been here? And if they say 3 years, 4 years, 7 years, 9 years since the beginning, that's a really good sign. But when people say, I've been here 16
years.
Yeah, or I've been here 6 months, I've been here 9 months, I'm the longest member of the team, just celebrated my first year.
Not a great thing, that.
No, it's not. And it's a real pointer as well.
Yeah.
So you started winning these big contracts.
Yeah.
And then the app explosion, you took off on the back of it. I'm not being disrespectful now when I say this, but you grew to about 2.5 million turnover.
Yeah.
70 or 80 staff.
Yeah.
Nice, solid business. And the phrase that everyone used about Apadmi was Manchester's best kept secret, which I always thought was a back-ended compliment as well.
Yeah.
And then there was this life-changing moment which completely changed the direction of the business. But would you admit, Garry Partington of Rochdale, that you ran a lifestyle business?
Yeah. I'll admit that we were pretty. So what we did was we were spinning out other ideas into other ventures. So we spun out several different businesses that we were seeing as they were the ones that
I remember a
that
few
we
of
could
them.
take off. Yeah.
Yeah, Reality Mind was one, wasn't it?
Yeah, and that's still going today. And and other businesses that we did that were trying out new technologies. One of them we were doing interior store tracking and location, and for retail and other things like that we spun out. But we decided that our main business, Apadmi, when we came back, was like, this is where our focus has got to be.
But the thing that really focused the mind was a near-death experience for Howard Sims, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
Just tell us about that.
So Howard was away on holiday with his family. It was something, something that could happen to anyone, which is what I think put it into its level of gravity. Is that he went on holiday, he went horse riding. It was in Turks and Caicos, I can never say it. And the horse ran through some dirty water. He just had a little cut on his foot from athlete's foot. He got an infection in through the dirty water. Next day, I think he was flying home. His foot started swelling up a bit. And within a few days, he was really poorly in hospital. He ended up with loads of things, MRSA, and it ended up being really, that went into, I think, pneumonia and sepsis and so on, and cellulitis in his leg. And so it was really, life and death. He was very, very poorly.
He was in a coma, yeah.
Went in a coma for a few days, and the doctors were not very positive about his outlook. So
can I ask you, we joke about Nick and Howard and Adam as well, but when somebody like that has been your mate for a long time,
and
I don't know if you ever saw him when he was in hospital.
Yeah, I went in to see him.
What is that like? Because I don't think you can always leave your problems at the door.
Yeah,
you see your mate. What was that like for you?
It was awful to go in and I was chatting to his wife Vicky, and talking to him and understanding where he was at and trying to do everything we could to help. And then when I went in to see him, he was gone, very thin. He'd lost so much weight, and the fact he could barely stand up, couldn't walk around. It was just a real shock to see, and it just made us all think about things a bit differently, really.
He had to learn to walk again, didn't he?
Yeah.
Such was his, and I think the doctor said they couldn't put a figure on his chance of survival, but it wasn't high.
It wasn't very good, yeah.
But thankfully, he's come back, and he's come back with a bang.
All fine, completely recovered. Just changed his outlook on life and what he wanted to do.
Changed his outlook, changed your outlook, because up until that point, you've been running a lifestyle business.
Yeah.
And then there's Jim Collins, which a lot of the listeners will know, big successful author. He came up with this phrase, your big, hairy, audacious goal.
Yeah.
And says that we should all have a big, hairy, audacious goal, which is something which is so far out there that other people will say that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I think it would be fair to say, of the four of you, you came up with this big, hairy, audacious goal and basically said, listen, we've got a lifestyle business. If we're serious about creating something for our families, we've got to think bigger. Just tell me about your mindset.
Yeah, so I was thinking, how do we change what we're currently doing? How do we get people focused around something that is that BHAG that you can really think, right, this is going to drive us forward? So took everybody away for a bit of a strategy weekend, which is some of that's become a little bit of a tradition now, which was a ski weekend. And, got everybody to think about what's going to move the dial, what's going to really change everybody's focus, and pitched to everybody this idea of the 5-5-1500. So 5 years' time, being 5 countries with 1,500 people. And, we all solidified around that to come up with a way to do it. Taking us a little bit longer, I guess, because we then COVID in the middle and with changing some of the things. But, we're very much well on our way to achieving that goal and allowing us to do what we wanted to do, which was for Howard to exit the business.
See, I looked at that example and other examples that I've heard, and I'm trying to apply it to a business cloud, much smaller business. But we, at the start of the year, sat down and we said, right, okay, we want to get to 1 million unique users on the website, which last year we did 477,000. Now we're on track for that. Okay.
Yeah.
But we said, how do we get there? Well, we need to hire somebody.
Yep.
How do we get to this number of subscribers? How do we get to really, game-changing events as well?
Yeah.
And the first time you mention it, there's that intake a breath. Well, it's a bit ambitious, isn't it? But when you first mentioned that to your co-founders and said, right, the 5-5-5, okay, did they say, look, Gary, you've clearly had a knock on the head. You're talking crazy.
Yeah, so pretty much it was like it was just a little bit of silence for a few minutes, and then everyone like, okay, well, what do you mean by that? Explain it more, because the whole thing about it is there's I've probably got about 15 slides behind that explain what that means. What does being in 5 countries mean? What does that mean for what we're delivering and the products and services we offer globally around that? But it's that everyone can remember it. So everybody in the business knows. You can ask any member of the team and they'll go 1500. It's just there. We talk about it all the time. Just like our vision of being the leader in the creation of digital products that make a difference for our clients. That's what we want to do. And, everybody knows those things, but you can really succinctly remember 1500.
I think I come from a media perspective, PR, marketing, that side of things. And anyone who follows me on LinkedIn will know I'm a big fan of cricket. My cricket club, White Coppice Cricket Club near Chorley, 150 years old this year, and we needed to raise money to secure its future.
Yeah.
I remember sitting around the committee and how much do we need to raise? Well, we need to raise £29,000 to replace a septic tank. How much have we got in the bank? 10. Well, we need to raise £19,000. I said, we can't raise £19,000 because £19,000 in 150th year doesn't work. So I said, let's go for 150 grand in 150th year. We'll never raise it. I said, you're probably right. I said, but we'll get a lot more money by aiming for the stars. And that was the BHAG, the Big Hairy Audacious Goal mentality. So I look at where you're at today in terms of Apadmi. So you're in 3 countries. You're in the UK, you're in Netherlands, in Portugal. You made an acquisition, I think.
Yeah.
Your first one was in the Netherlands.
Was in the Netherlands, yeah.
Yeah. I think you've got 420 staff.
Yep.
You've mentioned you've done some M&A. You've raised some investment, which saw Howard exit.
Yep.
Centre left. Okay. I think you've hit 30 million turnover this year, and you're looking at 40 million next year as well. How has that Big Hairy Audacious Goal, how has that changed the dynamic of the business? Because you're not that best kept secret anymore. And do you know everybody's name in the business now, or do you get to a point where you can't?
A big chunk. Don't know everybody's name anymore, but know a lot of people. And that's the nice thing. When we do the introductions, have this concept. The door's never shut. You can always come and talk to me or any of the other founders. We want that as flat a hierarchy as possible. We still socialize with all the team. We do lots of regular things to break down those barriers. We get a lot of the team in the office still, even though it's not mandatory forced for people. We get a lot of people coming to the office to experience that Apadmi life.
Have you got a set number of days in the office minimum?
No.
So if people want to work from home, they can.
Yeah. But there's a few roles where it is.
Yeah.
And there's a few teams where we try and get people in to just work together and learn from each other. Yeah. A lot of the team choose to come in. A lot of people are in the office every day. The free food, the free drinks, the free, and especially when it's getting a bit warmer, the air conditioning does make a difference. But
I find that fascinating because a lot of companies are wrestling with this work from the office, work from home mix. We have 2 days in the office and 3 days at home as well. Without the 2 days in the office, our newest member of staff, Patrick, who's only young, 22, I don't think he gets that one-to-one time and that learning that you get when you're surrounding yourself by people who've got the grey hairs as well.
Learning by osmosis.
100%. So we talk about leadership. So Apadmi recently won the Judges Leadership Award at the Northern Tech Awards, fantastic awards run by GP Bullhound. What's your approach to leadership? Your personal approach? I know we touched on it at the start.
Yeah. I like to lead by example. So, make sure that I'm showing the work ethic, make sure that I'm there. Normally, I'm in the office every day, just because I find I want to make it easy for people to access me. If they want to have a quick chat around the coffee machine, I'm there to do do
you drink a lot of coffee, don't you?
I do drink a lot of coffee, yeah. We used to have one of the coffee machines in the office. This is going back, used to be nicknamed the code generator, that nobody could actually write any code until that was filled with coffee. So, But just lead by example, be there, be accessible, but also try and let people do what they need to do.
You share that story about the code generator and the coffee machine as well. You think to yourself, I think to myself, if that was ever turned into a film, that'd be quite a quirky moment. If the Apadmi story was ever turned into a film, like they've done with Facebook, who would play you?
Crikey, I've not even. who I'd love to say, because I'm just a fan, would Keanu Reeves would be me. I love Keanu Reeves. I love The Matrix.
Can I just say, when I look at you now,
you can see the resemblance.
I think to myself, I think, I think he'd be honoured. He'd be lucky to play you.
I think it'd be more Simon Pegg, to be honest with you.
Simon Pegg. Who would play Howard Sims? I mean, there's a tricky one. Probably he's thinking Ryan Gosling, but anyway,
in his dreams.
You're a big archery fan.
He would actually say Hugh Jackman.
Yeah, he would say that.
That's who he wants.
Yeah, he would say that. Danny DeVito for Mr. Black, Nick Black, maybe.
Yeah, that's a good fit.
Yeah, that's a good fit. Ricky Gervais, maybe. I hadn't realised this until I was doing my research. You're a big archery fan.
Yeah.
You've donated quite a lot of money to the creation of an archery range in Rochdale. So you've had some success in business, which you've worked incredibly hard for. You're at a point in your life now. How important is it for you to give stuff back?
Yeah, definitely. I want to give a lot of my time and support through where I can to help people on the journeys. You know, if people ever reach out to me, I'm always up to have a coffee to talk about them and their businesses and answer any questions they have. You know, and that happens fairly regular. And, you know, and back with the community, try and help what I can. Because, you know, I'm fortunate to be in this position now. We've worked hard and we're able to do some of those things.
We always end the Northern Leaders podcast with two of the same questions. The first one is, which Northern leaders do you admire?
So I think there's a few in the tech space that I really do think have done great jobs. You know, and it's hard to name particularly one that stands out. But there's, you know, when you look at people like Scott Fletcher and what he did with ANS, you look at some of the things that have happened with other businesses around. You know, you've got Gavin, who's coming in later, has done a great job on Purple, and then, you know, some that, you know, you look at Matt Moulding and what he's done there. It's great business, you know, and you know, people have done quite well in the north. There's a number of those.
The Matt Moulding story, and if you're listening, Matt, you are welcome on the Northern, the Northern Leaders podcast. I think that fundamentally a really good business, but they listed and they get that public scrutiny, which doesn't sit very easily with him. Never tempted to list yourself?
I've looked at it. I've done the London Stock Exchange Elite program, and I was placed next to the LSE people that were trying to convince me to look at it at Northern Tech Awards. You know, I don't think so at the moment. That wouldn't be something that I would particularly enjoy. No. You know, in the private equity back world, you still have a lot of flexibility and control in where you're taking the business. When you have to be so much more open with the markets, you know, you're restricted a bit in what you can do and how you can go about things. I'm not sure that's for me. No,
I'm not sure it's for a lot of people, actually, especially Northerners as well, like yourself. So the last question is this. Many years from now, because you're only a young man, okay, what would you want your epitaph to be?
Built an amazing digital products business that really has helped change the definition of some of the greatest apps and products that have been out there today. Was a loved family man who spent a lot of time with his kids and just had fun along the way.
Yeah. If incidentally that you predeceased me and I'm older than you, I would probably add best dressed man in there as well. Yeah. You know, I wonder what you'd be dressed in if they said let's dress him in something smart. Is there anything in your wardrobe for fashion disasters that they could put you out in?
I have got a few nice suits, but yeah, I did actually go to a previous Northern Tech Awards. I didn't read it right. I did go in my DJ when everybody else was in jeans and shirts, but yeah.
I wish I'd been there for that. Garry Partington, thanks very much for joining us on this episode of the Northern Leaders podcast. We're going to go away for a quick break.
Cheers, Chris.
Business Cloud provides tech insight with Byte. To get the best business tech news straight into your inbox, just subscribe to our free newsletter. Details on our website. Welcome back to the Northern Leaders podcast. Garry Partington, with 2 R's, has left the room. How do I reflect on that interview? I've known Garry for a long time, and hopefully that came across in the interview, but I found out stuff there that I didn't know, like why he's got 2 R's in Garry for a start. The thing about Garry, he's just a really nice guy, and we were joking about his famous fashion sense as well, and we were just talking off air there before, and some people think, oh, Chris is a bit mean to Garry about his fashion sense, but he says no, he's telling the truth. What I thought was great about Garry is he created this business. It was successful. He's really like that. He's so tight with the other co-founders as well. And even Howard, who left the business, they're always trying to meet up and, have a drink and a catch up as well, because there's this real core and this real bond that exists between them. The story that I really like, though, is the way that he wanted to turn it from a lifestyle business into something a bit bigger. And he came out with this Big Hairy Audacious Goal, but it needed the near death of Howard to make them realize that they actually had to do something slightly out of the box if they were going to really achieve their potential as well. And as I mentioned before, Apadmi is doing £30 million this year, employs 420 people. Next year, they're going to go to 40 million. They're looking to get in at least 2 more countries as well. And no, I really, really enjoyed that interview with Garry Partington, and I hope that came across in the interview as well. That's all for this episode of the Northern Leaders podcast. Thanks for our sponsor, Wildbrook Commercial Real Estate, and also our friends at What Media for producing this podcast and turning our ramblings into the final product. Please give the podcast a 5-star ratings as well. And if you like it, tell your friends. And if you don't like it, tell your friends. Thanks very much.